My cousin took my grandma's gold bracelet and pearl necklace weeks after the funeral, then posted them on Instagram as a vintage find. When I confronted her, she got defensive and said, "You don't even wear jewelry like that. It's wasted on you." At least I appreciate it. I just stared at her. That was 9 months ago. This morning, she sat in court in an orange jumpsuit, eyes fixed on the floor. My cousin stole my grandmother's jewelry, so I sold her confession to the whole family. My grandmother passed away last year. She was 86 and one of the kindest people I've ever known. When she died, she left behind a small but precious jewelry collection. Not because it was worth a fortune, though some pieces were, but because they had sentimental value. There was a pearl necklace she wore at her wedding, a gold bracelet my grandfather gave her on their 25th anniversary, and a few rings she'd had since she was a young woman. She told us countless times that when she was gone, her jewelry should be split between her 3 granddaughters, me, my sister, and my cousin Tara. After her funeral, my aunt, Tara's mom, offered to keep the jewelry box in her house until things settled down. I didn't think much of it at the time. I trusted her. A month later, my sister called me in a panic. She had just visited my aunt's house and asked to see the jewelry. When my aunt opened the box, more than half the pieces were gone, including the pearl necklace and the gold bracelet. My aunt looked surprised and said, "Oh, maybe your grandmother misplaced them before she passed. You know how old people forget things." That was my first red flag. My grandmother might have forgotten where she put her glasses or her TV remote, but her jewelry was always in the same place, her top dresser drawer. I started asking around. My aunt acted like I was being dramatic. She said, "You're obsessing over things instead of grieving properly. It's just jewelry." She knew it wasn't just jewelry. These were family heirlooms. Then Tara got defensive out of nowhere. "Why are you making this about you? Grandma loved me too. Stop acting like you're the favorite." I hadn't accused her of anything yet, but her reaction was weird. A week later, my sister spotted something strange on Instagram. Tara had posted a picture of herself at a party, wearing my grandmother's gold bracelet. She had captioned it, "Vintage find." I texted her, "That's grandma's bracelet. Why do you have it?" She replied, "Calm down. I'm just borrowing it. Aunt said I could take it for a while. Don't be so controlling." Borrowing? Without asking either me or my sister? And what about the pearl necklace? When I pushed again, she got nasty. "You don't even wear jewelry like that. It's wasted on you." At least I appreciate it. That was when I realized she'd probably taken all of it. I messaged one of her friends. I asked if she'd seen Tara wearing any pearl jewelry lately. She said yes. Tara wore the necklace to a dinner 2 weeks ago, bragging that it was an inheritance and totally hers now. I confronted her in person. I showed up at her apartment, and at first, she tried to laugh it off. "Wow, you really think I'm some kind of thief? That's hilarious." Then she switched to playing the victim. "You've always been jealous of me. You can't stand that grandma gave me more because she trusted me." I told her to prove it. "Show me the rest of grandma's jewelry if it's really hers." She refused, saying she didn't have to explain herself and that I was turning the family against her. So I did the one thing she didn't expect. I told her I had screenshots of her wearing the bracelet and necklace, plus messages from her friend confirming she'd bragged about taking them. I said I'd give her one chance to confess on video before I sent everything to the whole family. At first, she called my bluff. "No one will believe you. They'll think you're making stuff up like always." Then she started panicking. "Okay, fine. Yes, I took them. Grandma would have wanted me to have them anyway. She always said I had the best taste. I'll give them back if you just drop it." I recorded the entire thing. I uploaded the confession to a private shared folder and sent the link to every single family member. Uncles, aunts, cousins, even her dad, who lives in another country. I included the screenshots and the messages from her friend. The fallout was instant. My phone started blowing up. My aunt called me screaming, accusing me of humiliating her daughter. I calmly told her that if Tara hadn't stolen from Grandma, there'd be nothing to humiliate her over. Some relatives were shocked into silence. Others were furious at Tara. My uncle, her dad, called me to say he was deeply disappointed in her and that she'd embarrassed the entire family. Apparently, he had sent her money for school, but now he wasn't sure she'd even used it for that. Tara sent me a long voice note crying about how I'd ruined her life over a few trinkets. She claimed she'd only taken them because she felt unappreciated and left out. She even said, "You've always had it easier than me. I deserve something nice for once." That made my blood boil. My grandmother made it clear that the jewelry was to be split fairly. Tara didn't deserve more just because she thought her life was harder. 2 days later, my sister got a knock on her door. It was a courier delivering a box. Inside were all the missing pieces of jewelry, plus a cheap silver chain that definitely wasn't my grandmother's. Now she's cut off from most relatives. She wasn't invited to our cousin's wedding last month. Thought that was the end of it until this morning, when I got a thick envelope in the mail. Inside was a formal letter from a law firm. Tara was suing me for emotional distress and defamation. The thick legal papers spread across my kitchen table the next morning while my coffee sat there getting cold. I kept reading the same line over and over, something about damages in excess of $50,000, which was more money than I had in my entire savings account. My hands were shaking a little as I grabbed my laptop and started Googling defamation defense lawyers in Chicago, clicking through website after website trying to figure out who might actually be able to help me without charging a fortune just to talk. Rachel called while I was reading reviews for the 10th law firm, and her voice was all shaky when she told me to check Facebook right away. Aunt Linda had posted this long rant about how I was destroying the family with lies and manipulation, how I'd always been jealous of Tara, and how some people just couldn't stand to see others succeed. 23 people had already liked it, and there were comments from relatives I hadn't talked to in years saying things like they always knew I was trouble. That afternoon, I sat in attorney Monica Smith's office downtown, the whole place smelling like leather and old books while she went through every page of the lawsuit with this little frown on her face. She kept making notes in neat handwriting on a yellow legal pad, circling things and drawing arrows between different sections. She looked up at me and said, "The confession video was my strongest defense, but we needed to document absolutely everything. Every message, every witness statement, every single piece of evidence about the jewelry." The retainer fee made my stomach drop when she said it. $5,000 just to get started, not including court costs or anything else that might come up. I wrote the check anyway because what else was I supposed to do? Just let Tara win? The next day, Rachel forwarded me a screenshot from our cousin group chat that I'd left months ago after too much drama. Tara's best friend Melissa was in there claiming I'd edited the confession video using AI to make it look like Tara was admitting to something she never did. 3 other cousins had already liked her comment, and someone named Jessica, who I barely remembered from family reunions, was saying she'd always known I was jealous and vindictive. My phone buzzed with a text from our cousin Michael that just said to stay strong, wrong and that they all knew the truth, but it got cut off mid-sentence like maybe he'd hit send too early. I spent the entire next day, literally 6 hours straight, sitting at my desk organizing every piece of evidence I had into folders on my computer and printing out copies for Monica. Screenshots of Tara wearing the jewelry at different events, her friend confirming she'd bragged about inheriting everything, the courier receipt showing she'd returned all the pieces after I'd exposed her, text messages going back months where she'd gotten defensive before I'd even accused her of anything. Monica emailed me that evening saying Brenner had requested a settlement meeting in 2 weeks and that they wanted this over quickly, which she said was actually good for us because it meant they knew their case was weak. That night, Mom called while I was reheating leftover Chinese food in the microwave, and I could tell she'd been crying before she even said anything. Her voice was all tired and broken when she told me Aunt Linda wouldn't speak to her anymore, that 30 years of being sisters was just gone because of this whole mess. I could hear her crying softly through the phone when she said she knew I did the right thing, but she never imagined it would tear the family apart like this. The discovery request from Brenner came through Monica's email the next morning. This formal document demanding all my social media history, my bank records, and any evidence of what they called previous defamatory behavior against Tara. Monica actually laughed when she forwarded it to me, calling it a fishing expedition because Brenner was hoping I'd badmouth Tara online before and he could use it against me. I hadn't ever said anything about her on social media, but the thought of some lawyer going through all my private messages and posts made my skin crawl. Rachel discovered the GoFundMe the next day when one of her coworkers sent it to her asking if everything was okay with our family. Tara had titled it Fighting Family Bullying Legal Defense Fund with a goal of $10,000, and the description painted me as this privileged cousin who couldn't stand to share grandma's attention or heirlooms with anyone else. I wonder what's really going through Tara's mind right now, making a GoFundMe after she already confessed and gave back the jewelry she took. The timing seems really strange, asking strangers for money while also paying a lawyer to sue for $50,000. She'd raised $500 in just 6 hours, mostly from her college friends who didn't know anything about what really happened and just saw her crying in the video she'd posted with it. Sunday morning, I went to Grandma's favorite coffee shop and ordered what she always got, black coffee and a chocolate croissant, sitting at the same corner table where we used to meet every other week. Mrs. Johnson, who owned the place, remembered me and came over to ask about the family, how everyone was doing since the funeral, if we were all getting along okay. I couldn't bring myself to tell her about the lawsuit or the jewelry or any of it, so I just said family is complicated, and she patted my hand like she understood without needing details. My phone rang at 3 in the morning on Monday, and it was Uncle Robert calling from Germany where it was already 9 in the morning, his voice heavy with exhaustion, even though his day had just started. He'd seen the GoFundMe and Linda's posts on Facebook, and he kept saying this is insanity over and over like he couldn't believe what was happening. He told me he definitely wasn't funding any part of Tara's lawsuit, and that he actually had evidence of her lying about using the education money he'd sent her last year, bank statements showing she'd spent it on clothes and trips instead of tuition. He said to send everything to my lawyer, and that he was done protecting her from the consequences of her actions. Monica filed our formal response to the lawsuit on Tuesday morning, denying all of Tara's claims and asserting truth as an absolute defense to defamation, which basically meant you can't sue someone for telling the truth about what you did. She also included a counterclaim for legal fees, explaining that if we won, Tara would have to pay all my attorney costs, which she said was aggressive, but totally justified given how frivolous the whole lawsuit was. 3 days passed with just angry texts from Aunt before everything exploded at my workplace. I was eating lunch at my desk on Thursday when the receptionist called to say someone was here to see me, and before I could even ask who, Aunt burst through the security doors holding her phone up, recording everything. She marched straight to my cubicle demanding I confess on camera that I'd edited the video of Tara, that I'd manipulated her poor daughter into saying things she didn't mean. My coworker stopped typing and stared as Aunt's voice got louder, accusing me of being jealous and spiteful, saying I'd always hated Tara because Grandma loved her more. Security arrived within minutes, but Aunt kept shouting even as they grabbed her arms, yelling that I was a liar and a thief who'd stolen from my own cousin. The whole office watched them drag her to the elevator while she screamed about suing me for everything I had. My supervisor pulled me into his office 20 minutes later and closed the door, telling me he didn't know what was happening, but I needed to keep my personal problems away from work. My face burned as I nodded and promised it wouldn't happen again, knowing everyone in the office was already gossiping about what they'd witnessed. The next morning, Rachel met me at Monica's office, where we sat around her conference table covered in legal documents. Monica explained their settlement offer was pure bluff since the confession video completely destroyed any defamation claim, but they were betting we'd pay just to make the mess go away. She pulled up 3 similar cases on her laptop where people had sued for defamation after being exposed for theft, and in every case, the truth defense had won. Rachel grabbed my hand and said we had to fight this, that we couldn't let them bully us into paying for their crimes. That evening, I sat alone in my apartment scrolling through old photos on my phone, finding one from Grandma's 85th birthday, where Tara and I had our arms around each other, both laughing at something Grandma had said. We'd been so close growing up. She was the cousin who'd sneak me candy during long family dinners and taught me how to braid my hair for school dances. Looking at her smile in that photo made my chest hurt because I couldn't figure out when everything had gone so wrong between us. Saturday morning, my phone exploded with notifications as Aunt had sent an email to 43 family members titled The Truth About the Jewelry, where she claimed I'd manipulated her grieving daughter into a false confession. She wrote that I'd always been jealous of Tara's special bond with Grandma and that I'd edited the video to make it look worse than it was. Within an hour, Michael had replied to everyone saying we'd all seen Tara wearing the stolen jewelry and Linda needed to stop lying about it. More relatives jumped in with their own replies, some supporting us, others staying quiet, and a few suggesting we should have handled this privately without involving lawyers. Monday was the settlement conference at a downtown mediation center where we sat across from Tara and Brenner in a stuffy conference room. Brenner spread out papers showing Tara's therapy bills, claiming she'd needed counseling for the emotional trauma of being publicly humiliated by her own family. He showed receipts for lost wages from missing work due to anxiety and printed screenshots of nasty comments people had left on her social media. Tara sat there in a black dress dabbing her eyes with a tissue, even though I could see they were completely dry. Monica opened her laptop and played the confession video at full volume, Tara's voice filling the room as she admitted to taking the jewelry. When it ended, Monica said simply that his client had confessed to theft, and we were done here. Brenner immediately changed tactics, claiming Tara had been under duress when the video was taken, that she'd felt threatened and coerced into saying things that weren't true. Monica actually laughed out loud and said his client had been in her own apartment speaking freely with no signs of distress. She asked if we should discuss the criminal theft charges I'd graciously chosen not to pursue, which made Tara's mask slip for just a second, pure hatred flashing in her eyes before she went back to playing victim. The mediator suggested we take a break, but neither side would budge on their positions, Brenner insisting on compensation, while Monica refused to pay a penny for telling the truth. In the parking garage afterward, Brenner approached us alone while Tara waited by his car, saying she'd take $15,000 and a private apology to make everything disappear. Monica stepped between us and told him there would be no deal, and she'd see him at trial. As we drove away, I watched in the side mirror as Tara screamed at Brenner next to his BMW, her arms waving wildly while he tried to calm her down. Tuesday at work was worse than before because someone had Googled my name and found Tara's GoFundMe page asking for donations to fight her abusive cousin's harassment campaign. During our team meeting, I caught two coworkers exchanging looks when our manager talked about company values and integrity. My productivity had tanked, and I knew my boss had noticed the pile of unfinished reports on my desk. Wednesday afternoon, Monica called with huge news. Uncle had sent her an email with 2 years of bank statements attached, showing he'd sent Tara $30,000 for graduate school at Northwestern. He'd included screenshots of her texts promising she was enrolled, talking about her classes and professors, even sending him fake grade reports. Monica had immediately subpoenaed Northwestern's enrollment records and called me that evening to confirm what we'd suspected. Tara had never been a student there. Thursday morning, Rachel picked me up and we drove to our parents' house to search through Grandma's papers in the basement. We found her handwritten will in a filing cabinet. The paper yellowed, but the writing still clear, stating the jewelry should be divided equally among her 3 granddaughters. Mom stood in the doorway watching us make copies, and when we finished, she said Grandma would be heartbroken, not about the jewelry, but about what it had done to the family. That Friday, I got the letter from Monica saying we had a strong case with the will as evidence. Over the next 2 weeks, things got worse online. Day 18 hit hard when Rachel texted me a link to Tara's Instagram. I clicked it and saw her crying in a video with mascara running down her face. The caption said something about family betraying you for things that don't matter. The comment section was a war zone with people taking sides. Someone had posted links to the court documents showing she was suing me. Her GoFundMe page that Melissa had set up suddenly stopped getting donations. Melissa commented on the video saying karma was coming for me. The next morning, I couldn't take it anymore and drove to the cemetery with a bunch of daisies from the grocery store. I sat by Grandma's headstone and told her I was sorry about everything. An old woman at the grave next to me heard me talking and said the dead understand more than the living do. Monday morning, Monica called while I was making coffee. She said Northwestern confirmed Tara was never enrolled there. Brenner had just asked for more time. She explained that lying about college makes Tara look bad to juries. That night around 10, someone started pounding on my apartment door. I looked through the peephole and saw my aunt standing there swaying a bit. When I opened the door, I could smell wine on her breath and her makeup was all smeared. She begged me to just apologize and make this go away. When I showed her the papers from Northwestern proving Tara lied about college, she started crying harder. She admitted she knew Tara lies but said mothers have to protect their kids. The next day, the judge gave them 6 more weeks before trial. Monica said this was good because they were scared. I kept checking my bank account watching the numbers go down from lawyer fees. Tara's playing the victim while Northwestern's enrollment office is basically saying, new phone, who dis? That's some next level make-believe right there, folks. Uncle Robert dropping those receipts like a truth bomb from Germany really shows family drama doesn't care about time zones. Rachel made a spreadsheet to track what we were spending and kept saying we'd get it back when we won. Monday morning, my boss called me into her office first thing. She said HR got a complaint about me and showed me printed emails someone sent them. They said I might be a liability risk because of the lawsuit. She had to put me on administrative review while they looked into it. My stomach dropped thinking I might lose my job over this. Monica sent a cease and desist letter to Melissa that same day for messing with my job. She filed papers asking for a protective order too. She kept using legal words I didn't understand, but I got that this was getting bigger than just family drama. 2 days later, I sat in my car at the grocery store parking lot for an hour, unable to go inside. My phone kept buzzing with messages from family, but I couldn't look at them. I ended up ordering pizza and crying in the shower until the water went cold. The next morning, Rachel called me yelling to check Instagram right away. There was a photo of Tara at a party wearing Grandma's pearl necklace with a caption about what's hers always being hers. The comments were going crazy with even her supporters confused since she said she returned everything. Monica took screenshots right away and said this was perfect evidence. We filed emergency papers the next day pointing out she still had jewelry she swore she gave back. The judge set a hearing for next week. Brenner called Monica within hours saying his client misspoke on social media and everything was returned. Monica told him to prove it with a full list under oath. That same night, Michael called me with news that made my stomach drop. The family reunion committee was meeting and my aunt was pushing to ban me from all future gatherings. Michael was trying to fight it, but the committee was split down the middle. Our 92-year-old great-aunt Florence had apparently told everyone she didn't live this long to watch family eat itself alive over jewelry. The next morning, we had the emergency hearing at the courthouse, and Brenner stood there arguing. The Instagram post was just an old photo posted by mistake. The judge wasn't buying any of it and ordered Tara to provide a sworn list of all jewelry in her possession within 72 hours. Tara stormed out of the courtroom, and when she passed me in the hallway, she hissed that I destroyed her life over nothing. I spent the next day working from home on administrative leave trying to keep it together. My cat wouldn't leave my lap all day like she could sense how stressed I was. I tried making Grandma's soup recipe for comfort, but it tasted wrong without her secret ingredient that she never told anyone. The following morning, my phone started blowing up with notifications from strangers calling me greedy and selfish and evil. Melissa had made a TikTok video titled, How My Best Friend's Cousin Destroyed Her Life Over Costume Jewelry, and it got 50,000 views in 6 hours. Someone found my LinkedIn and started messaging my coworkers. My professional reputation was crumbling while I watched helplessly. Monica immediately filed for an expanded protective order and contacted TikTok's legal department saying this was defamation per se, and Melissa just became a co-defendant. She told me to deactivate all my social media and let them scream into the void. I felt like I was disappearing from my own life completely. That weekend, I decided to stop playing defense and start investigating on my own. I messaged 3 of Tara's college friends on Facebook asking if she ever mentioned graduate school at Northwestern. 2 ignored me, but Katie responded saying Tara told them she deferred enrollment for mental health reasons, and they even threw her a going-away party. Monday morning, Tara's sworn inventory arrived claiming all jewelry was returned, but Rachel spotted something immediately. The list included Grandma's emerald ring as returned, but Grandma never owned an emerald ring in her life. Monica's eyes lit up when she saw it, because this was perjury, and Tara was padding the list to hide what she kept. We spent 3 hours at Monica's office, cross-referencing the inventory with old family photos. That night, my uncle called from Germany sounding completely defeated. Linda told him if he testified against Tara, she would divorce him after 30 years of marriage. He said he loved his daughter, but she'd become someone he didn't recognize, and maybe that was his fault. His pain was clear even across the ocean. HR finally cleared me to return to work the next day, but warned me any further disruptions would mean reconsideration. My coworkers were politely distant, and the easy friendship we used to have was gone. I ate lunch alone at my desk, pretending to be too busy for the break room. That evening, Katie sent me screenshots of text messages where Tara admitted she was going to get what Grandma really wanted her to have, and that the others didn't deserve it anyway. She also mentioned selling some pieces to pay off credit cards. Monica practically glowed when she saw them, because this was conspiracy to commit theft admitted in writing. The next morning, Monica called me at 7:30 to tell me we had to be in court by 9, because Brenner filed some kind of emergency motion. I threw on my only suit and drove to the courthouse where Monica was already waiting outside the courtroom with a stack of papers. Brenner stood near the door looking smug while he talked on his phone, and when we walked in, the judge was already seated looking annoyed at having his morning schedule disrupted. Brenner stood up and started arguing that I had no legal standing to claim harm since the jewelry wasn't officially mine yet, and the judge actually started laughing right there in court. He said something about how the client confessed to theft on video, and now she's suing the victim for telling people about it, and asked if Brenner wanted to rethink this motion. Brenner's face went red, and he immediately withdrew the motion, and we were out of there in less than 15 minutes. That afternoon, my phone started blowing up with texts from different family members, all saying Aunt had called them with various offers if they'd pressure me to drop everything. She told my mother she'd pay for a family vacation to Hawaii, and told Michael she'd donate $5,000 to his daughter's college fund, and even called my dad's brother who lives in Florida offering to pay off his credit card debt. Most of them told her to get lost, but 2 younger cousins texted me asking if maybe I should consider letting it go for family peace, and I had to explain that this wasn't just about jewelry anymore. The next evening, Rachel and I went to our favorite Italian place downtown for the first time in weeks, just to feel normal for an hour. She looked at me over her pasta and said, "Remember when our biggest worry was whether Grandma would like our Christmas presents?" And we both started laughing, then immediately felt bad about it. The waiter came over asking if we were celebrating something, and Rachel raised her water glass and said we're surviving, and we clinked glasses trying not to think about everything. Monica called me the next morning saying Brenner had reached out with a settlement offer where Tara would drop the lawsuit if I removed the confession video, and posted a statement saying it was all a misunderstanding. Monica told him that his client committed perjury in her sworn inventory, and we'd be filing criminal charges tomorrow unless she dropped the lawsuit and paid my legal fees, and I could hear Brenner yelling through the phone before Monica hung up on him. I spent that whole afternoon going through Tara's social media accounts from the past 5 years, and found a clear pattern where she claimed her ex-boyfriend stole her laptop when he actually returned it with proof, and her former roommate stole her security deposit when the landlord had photos of the apartment damage she caused, and her coworker stole her promotion when HR had documentation that she was fired for being late 17 times in 2 months. Monica practically bounced in her chair when I showed her the screenshot saying, "This shows a pattern of false accusations that would look beautiful in court." The next morning, Monica got a call from the manager at the fancy boutique where Tara worked, saying they'd seen the viral TikTok someone made about the case, and read the court documents online, and they were reviewing her employment since she handles expensive merchandise daily. Brenner called Monica within an hour screaming that this had gone too far, and we were destroying his client's life, and Monica's voice went ice cold when she said his client should have thought about that before stealing from her dead grandmother. Michael texted me that evening with screenshots from the family reunion committee meeting where they voted 7-3 not to ban me from future events, but Aunt resigned as treasurer in protest, and apparently Great Aunt Florence gave this whole speech about not letting the devil win by dividing the family. Someone actually made a motion to ban Tara instead, but they tabled it pending legal resolution, which Michael said caused another huge argument that lasted 40 minutes. That Saturday, I was cleaning out my closets trying to distract myself when I found an old birthday card from Tara from 5 years ago that said to my favorite cousin, "Thanks for always having my back," with a little heart drawn next to it. I sat there on my bedroom floor holding that card for probably 20 minutes, wondering if that person ever really existed, or if I just wanted to believe she did, because it was easier than accepting who she really was. Monday morning, we were back in court because Brenner filed another emergency motion claiming I was harassing his client by pursuing criminal charges, and the judge's face went completely red. He told Brenner that his client admitted to theft and committed perjury and is suing her victim, and if anyone is harassing anyone, it's the client doing the harassing, and then he denied the motion, and warned that if Brenner filed another frivolous motion, he'd consider sanctions. Something's off about Tara suddenly wearing Grandma's pearls at a party after claiming she returned everything. That's either really bold or really stupid. Makes me wonder if she's trying to provoke a reaction, or if she genuinely thinks nobody would notice her flaunting stolen jewelry on Instagram. That afternoon, Katie called me directly saying she had more information, and that Tara had sold some of Grandma's jewelry to a pawn shop months ago and bragged about getting $3,000 for what she called old junk. She sent me screenshots of their text messages where Tara was laughing about how easy it was to get cash for stuff nobody would even notice was missing, and Katie said she'd testify if we needed her to, and Monica immediately started the paperwork to subpoena the pawn shop records. 3 days later, I was eating lunch at my desk when the receptionist called to say someone was here to see me, and before I could ask who it was, I heard Tara screaming in the lobby. I rushed out to find her standing by the security desk with her hands balled into fists, and her face red as she yelled that I'd won, and she'd drop the lawsuit if I just stopped ruining her life. The security guard was already on his phone calling calling for backup while my coworkers started gathering in doorways to watch the show. Tara kept screaming that Grandma had loved her more and told her those things were hers and she deserved them after everything she'd been through. 2 more security guards arrived and started moving toward her, but she backed away and pointed at me saying I was a liar and a thief just like my mother. The police showed up within minutes and I watched them put handcuffs on her while she kept yelling that this was all my fault. My boss pulled me into his office and closed the door while everyone in the lobby stared through the glass walls. The next morning, Monica called to tell me Brenner had officially withdrawn from representing Tara and filed paperwork saying they had irreconcilable differences, which she explained was lawyer talk for his client being a complete disaster. Tara now had no lawyer and was facing criminal charges for violating the protective order, plus whatever charges came from her arrest at my workplace. My mom called an hour later to tell me Aunt had been calling her all morning begging her to make me drop everything, and Mom had hung up on her own sister for the first time in their lives. That afternoon, I went to Rachel's apartment and we sat on her couch going through the photos from Grandma's funeral on her laptop. Tara was in so many of them, holding Aunt's hand and crying real tears and hugging relatives and looking like she actually cared. Rachel pointed at one where Tara was touching Grandma's casket and said quietly that she'd loved Grandma, which made it worse because she loved her and still did this to her memory. We sat there for a long time just looking at pictures and not saying anything because there wasn't anything to say. The next day, Monica called me at work to tell me the pawn shop records had finally arrived and they showed exactly what we expected. Tara had sold Grandma's rose gold watch and her Art Deco brooch and 2 rings for $3,200 total, and she'd told the shop they were inherited from a distant relative. The shop had security footage of her bringing the items in and signing the paperwork, and Monica said she was filing criminal charges for theft and fraud immediately. The prosecutor's office accepted the case that same afternoon, and Monica told me this was now a criminal matter, and Tara was looking at real jail time, not just fines or probation. I was still processing that when my doorbell rang the next evening, and I opened it to find Uncle standing there with a cardboard box in his arms. He'd flown in from Germany without telling anyone, and he looked older than I remembered with dark circles under his eyes. He set the box on my kitchen table and opened it to show me all the gifts Tara had sent him over the years, including designer bags and expensive electronics and jewelry that he now knew she'd bought with the money he'd sent for her college tuition. His hands were shaking as he pulled out a receipt for a $3,000 handbag, and he said he needed me to know he didn't raise her to be this way, and he'd failed somewhere, and he was sorry. I made him coffee while he sat at my table crying and saying he should have seen the signs, but he'd wanted to believe his daughter was doing well in school. The next morning, I woke up to dozens of texts from relatives saying Tara's GoFundMe had been shut down after people reported it as fraud, and the platform was refunding all the donations. Her friend Melissa had deleted her TikTok after Monica sent her a legal threat about defamation, and someone had taken screenshots of Tara's Instagram before it went private, showing her selling designer bags with captions about needing money for legal bills. Monica called that weekend to update me that the prosecutor had offered Tara a plea deal where she'd get probation and have to pay restitution if she pleaded guilty to theft, and she had 72 hours to decide. I felt nothing when she told me this, just tired like I'd been running for months and couldn't stop even though I wanted to. I decided to go back to Grandma's favorite coffee shop on Sunday morning, and the owner, Mrs. Williams, recognized me right away and brought my usual order without me having to ask. She sat down across from me and said I looked tired, and I ended up telling her everything that had happened since Grandma died. She listened without interrupting, then told me Grandma had come to this shop for 40 years and always said I was the strong one who would protect what mattered when she was gone. I started crying into my coffee and she just sat there patting my hand until I stopped. Monday morning, I opened my email to find Aunt had sent a message to the entire family with photos of Tara as a baby and at graduations and birthday parties and family gatherings with a long message about how we were destroying a confused young woman who just made some mistakes. Michael replied to everyone within minutes saying Tara was 28 years old and stole from her dead grandmother and tried to destroy her cousin with lies, so Aunt needed to stop enabling her. The email chain exploded with relatives taking sides and arguing, and some saying they were done with the whole family, while others demanded apologies from everyone involved. Tuesday afternoon, my supervisor called me into her office and said the disruption to our workplace had been significant, but HR had concluded I was the victim in this situation. She offered to transfer me to a different department for a fresh start, and even though it was a lateral move with no raise, I accepted because at least I still had a job after everything that had happened. The next few weeks became a blur of legal meetings and court dates that kept getting pushed back. Monica called me on a Thursday morning to tell me Tara had rejected the plea deal they'd offered her, which would have given her community service and probation instead of jail time. Her new public defender was trying a different angle, claiming Tara had been suffering from complicated grief when she took the jewelry, but Monica shut that down fast when she pulled out the pawn shop records showing Tara had sold 3 pieces of Grandma's jewelry 3 months before Grandma even died. The prosecutor's face went dark when he saw those dates and immediately added fraud charges to the existing theft charges. That Friday, Rachel called me crying because she'd been going through Grandma's papers to help settle the estate and found a birthday card from Tara dated 2 months before Grandma passed. Inside, Tara had written thanks for the jewelry Grandma was leaving her and promised to treasure it always, which meant she'd been planning this while Grandma was still alive and just waiting for her to die. My hands were shaking when Rachel sent me the photo of that card. Saturday, I went grocery shopping and ran straight into Linda pushing her cart toward the exit, and she tried to dodge around me, but our carts got tangled up. She looked terrible, like she hadn't slept in days, and she started talking fast about how Tara had been spiraling for years with the lying and stealing, and she thought supporting her would help, but she was wrong. I didn't say I forgave her because I didn't, but I nodded and let her go because we were all just trying to survive this mess. Monday brought another call from Monica saying the prosecutor had found security footage from Grandma's apartment building showing Tara using the spare key to get in 3 different times while Grandma was in the hospital for her final stay. The footage showed her leaving with bags each time, and the prosecutor said this changed everything from simple theft to grand theft, with a potential sentence of 3 to 5 years in prison. Tuesday, Uncle flew in from Germany and went straight to Monica's office with a briefcase full of bank statements and printed emails showing years of Tara's lies about needing money for school and rent when she was actually spending it on clothes and trips. He looked broken, but determined when he told Monica he was going to testify against his own daughter because Linda had already left him over this, and he wanted to do one right thing. Wednesday, the boutique boutique where Tara worked fired her after the grand theft charges became public, and she posted a video on Facebook that got taken down within an hour, but not before several cousins saw it and sent it to me. In the video, she looked wild, her hair messy and her eyes red, ranting about how the family had destroyed her over things that were rightfully hers because grandma had promised them to her. My phone kept buzzing with messages from cousins saying she needed help, not prison, but it was too late for that now. Thursday, I took a day off work and drove to my parents' house where Rachel was already waiting, and we spent the whole day trying to pretend everything was normal while Dad made his pancakes and Mom worked in her garden. We didn't talk about the case or Tara or the trial, just sat together eating dinner with empty chairs where Linda and Tara used to sit during family gatherings. Uncle's bringing receipts from Germany like he's hosting an episode of true crime documentary, while Tara's out here getting fired faster than she can update her LinkedIn status. Turns out stealing from dead grandmas doesn't look great on a resume. Friday morning, Monica called to tell me Tara had filed a new lawsuit against Linda for failing to protect the inheritance properly, claiming her own mother should have secured the jewelry better, and was therefore responsible for any losses. My mom's phone rang 20 minutes later with Linda sobbing on the other end, screaming that her own daughter was suing her after she'd given up everything to protect her. Saturday night, I sat alone in my apartment staring at the jewelry Tara had returned in that courier box months ago, running my fingers over grandma's pearl necklace and gold bracelet and wondering if they were worth all this destruction. Rachel had suggested we sell everything and donate the money to charity to end this nightmare, but I couldn't bring myself to do it because grandma had wanted us to have these pieces even though she never could have imagined they'd tear our family apart like this. 3 weeks later, Monica called me to her office downtown. The criminal trial date was set and she needed to prep me for testimony. I sat across from her desk while she spread out folders and papers everywhere. She told me to tell the truth, show the evidence, and not get emotional when I talked about my cousin, but how could I not get emotional about this whole mess? She showed me the prosecution's case with all the evidence stacked up. Monica said quietly that Tara was going to prison and there was no avoiding it now. The next day, my phone rang, and it was Aunt Linda calling me directly for the first time since this all started. Her voice sounded hollow and broken. She said she knew what Tara did, and she'd always known her daughter had problems, but kept hoping things would get better. She kept enabling her instead of getting help. She broke down crying and said she was dropping her support, and Tara was on her own because she couldn't lose anything else. The call ended with her sobbing so hard she couldn't talk anymore. That same afternoon, Monica called to tell me Tara's public defender was requesting a competency evaluation, saying she wasn't mentally fit for trial. Monica thought it was just a delay tactic, but the judge ordered the evaluation anyway. Rachel texted me screenshots from a friend's Instagram where Tara had posted that they were trying to say she was crazy, but she wasn't crazy, and just wanted what was hers. The post got deleted within hours, but people had already grabbed screenshots and they were circulating everywhere. I finally went to my first therapy session since this whole thing started. The therapist sat there listening to everything I told her about the jewelry and the lawsuit and the family falling apart. She asked what I needed to heal from all this. I sat there thinking, but didn't know the answer. Did I want justice or peace or my family back together? I finally told her I just wanted to stop feeling guilty for protecting myself. She nodded and said that's where we'd start working. 2 days later, the competency evaluation came back saying Tara was fit for trial, but recommended psychiatric treatment. Her public defender filed for a plea bargain based on mental health considerations. The prosecutor offered 18 months in prison, 5 years probation, full restitution, and mandatory therapy. Monica said Tara would be stupid not to take that deal. The next morning at work, they held a team meeting about maintaining professional boundaries during personal challenges. Without naming me directly, it was obviously about my situation. Afterward, a coworker came up and said everyone knew what happened and I did nothing wrong. But the damage was already done because I'd always be known as the one with the crazy family drama at this job. That evening, Rachel called me freaking out because she discovered Tara had created fake social media accounts to harass us. The messages were vicious with death threats and accusations and graphic descriptions of what she hoped would happen to us. Monica immediately sent everything to the prosecutor. She said Tara just violated her bail conditions and would be going to jail tonight. The arrest happened at Aunt Linda's house the next morning. Linda called my mother crying that Tara had fought the police physically and they had to restrain her. She was held without bail pending trial. Her public defender withdrew from the case citing safety concerns after Tara threatened her too. The court had to appoint a new attorney. The family group chat exploded with news of Tara's arrest. Cousins who had stayed neutral finally started speaking up saying this had gone too far. Michael organized a family meeting without Linda or Tara to discuss moving forward. Only 12 people showed up, which was half the family. The others had picked sides or just opted out completely. Sunday morning, I drove to the cemetery alone. I sat by Grandma's grave and told her everything that had happened like she could hear me. I whispered that I was sorry it came to this, and I just wanted to honor what she wanted for us. The wind picked up suddenly, and for a second I could swear I smelled her perfume. It was probably just my imagination, but it brought the first real peace I'd felt in months. 3 days later, Monica called me to the courthouse for an emergency hearing where Tara's new lawyer was trying to get the whole case thrown out. The courtroom was half empty when I arrived and took my seat behind Monica, who was already reviewing her notes. Tara sat at the defense table in her orange jumpsuit, looking thinner than I'd ever seen her with dark circles under her eyes. Her lawyer stood up and started arguing this was just a family dispute that didn't belong in criminal court. The judge cut him off after about 5 minutes, and his voice got real sharp. He said the defendant stole from a dying woman and committed fraud and violated protective orders and threatened witnesses. Motion denied, he said, and slammed his gavel down hard. Tara jumped up and started screaming that this was all lies and I was jealous and trying to destroy her life. 2 bailiffs had to drag her out while she kept yelling curse words that echoed down the hallway. The next morning, Uncle Robert showed up at my apartment holding an old shoebox and looking like he hadn't slept in days. He sat on my couch and pulled out this pink diary with a little lock on it from when Tara was 12 years old. He'd found it cleaning out her old room at his ex-wife's house, and the stuff inside made him sick. Page after page talked about how she deserved more than other kids and how to trick people into giving her things. One entry from 7th grade described stealing her best friend's bracelet, then comforting her when she cried about losing it. The signs were always there, he said quietly, and I just didn't want to see them. We sat there for a while not saying much while he flipped through more pages showing me entries where she'd practiced lying to teachers and parents. Monica's call the next afternoon stopped me cold in the middle of grocery shopping. Tara attacked another inmate in the lunch line, and now she's facing assault charges on top of everything else, Monica said quickly. The woman needed stitches, and Tara broke 2 fingers in the fight, so now the trial has to be postponed while they process new charges. She's spiraling completely, Monica added, and at this rate she's looking at 5 to 10 years minimum. I stood there in the cereal aisle holding my phone and felt nothing at all, not satisfaction or sadness, just this weird empty feeling. Mom called that evening to tell me Aunt Linda put her house up for sale and was moving to Florida to live with her sister. Linda had told Mom she was done and had given Tara everything and now had nothing left to give. I drove by the house the next day and saw the red and white for sale sign stuck in the front lawn where we used to play as kids. Rachel met me at a coffee shop downtown the following afternoon to talk about what we should do with Grandma's jewelry when this was all over. She suggested maybe having the pieces reset into new jewelry since Grandma would understand we needed to move forward. We decided to wait until after the trial, and for now, everything stays locked in the bank's safety deposit box as evidence of what tore our whole family apart. The prosecutor's office was freezing when Monica and I met with the lead attorney to go over everything one more time before trial. She spread out all the evidence across the conference table, including security footage and pawn shop records, and the confession video and text messages and bank records. This is one of the clearest cases of family theft I've ever prosecuted, she said, tapping the stack of papers. With the new assault charges, Tara's looking at minimum 7 years, possibly 10 if the judge decides to make an example. Going back to work felt strange after being off for so long dealing with all the legal stuff. My new department didn't know anything about the drama, which was exactly what I needed. My supervisor pulled me aside my first day back and said fresh starts are valuable, so make the most of it. I tried to believe her, but kept checking my phone for updates from Monica. The video conference request came through while I was eating lunch at my desk the next day. On the screen, Tara looked like a ghost with greasy hair hanging in her face and the orange jumpsuit hanging loose on her skinny frame. She looked straight at me, ignoring both lawyers, and said she wanted to make a deal. Drop the criminal charges and I'll sign over any inheritance rights to everything else, she said in this flat voice I'd never heard from her before. Monica muted our side and whispered, she has no inheritance rights anyway because of the crimes, so she's just desperate. We declined and Tara started crying, but it looked fake, like she was trying to squeeze out tears that wouldn't come. The courthouse was packed on trial day with reporters who'd heard about the grandmother's jewelry case and family members filling up 3 rows of seats. Why does Uncle Robert suddenly show up with a diary from when Tara was 12? This timing feels really convenient when he's had years to look through old boxes. Makes me wonder if he knew about these entries all along but kept quiet until now. They brought Tara in with shackles on her wrists and ankles, making this metallic scraping sound with each step. She kept her head down and wouldn't look at anyone, not even her own lawyer who kept trying to whisper something to her. Uncle Robert sat right behind me, and I could hear him crying softly when the prosecutor started her opening statement about family betrayal and greed. The confession video hit the jury hard when they played it on the big screen. Tara's voice filled the courtroom saying, yes, I took them, and Grandma would have wanted me to have them anyway. Several jurors looked disgusted, and one older woman shook her head the whole time it played. Then came the security footage from Grandma's building showing Tara going in with empty bags while Grandma was dying in the hospital and coming out with them full. The timestamp showed it was just 2 hours after Grandma had been rushed to the emergency room. The prosecutor called me to the stand next, and for 3 hours I walked through everything. Finding the jewelry missing, confronting Tara, getting her confession on video, every single detail, while Tara's attorney kept interrupting, trying to make me look like some jealous cousin who wanted to destroy her client. He asked why I shared the video with the whole family instead of handling it privately, and I just said they deserved to know who she really was. That's when Tara jumped up from her seat screaming that I was lying, and 2 bailiffs had to grab her arms and drag her back while the judge banged his gavel warning about contempt charges. Uncle Robert testified next about the $30,000 he'd sent from Germany for her graduate school that never existed, his voice cracking when he admitted he'd been sending money for years, believing her lies about tuition and textbooks and lab fees. Then the prosecutor played a video call from someone named Katie, who said Tara had bragged about selling some of the jewelry at a party, and the pawn shop owner came up with security footage showing Tara at his counter with Grandma's ruby earrings just 3 days after the funeral. The evidence kept piling up, and the jury looked more disgusted with each new revelation. The next morning, Tara took the stand against her attorney's advice and claimed everyone was lying, that I'd manipulated the video somehow, that Grandma had promised her everything because she was the only one who really cared. But when the prosecutor started asking specific questions, she kept changing her story. First saying she took the jewelry for safekeeping, then saying Grandma gave it to her, then finally screaming it should have been mine. All of it. I deserved it more than you ever did. The jury members were shaking their heads, and one woman in the front row looked ready to cry. After just 2 hours of deliberation, they came back with guilty on all counts: grand theft, fraud, perjury, violation of the protective order, witness intimidation, everything. Tara collapsed in her chair screaming that we'd destroyed her life, and as the bailiffs dragged her out, she looked right at me and shrieked, I hope you're happy, you got what you wanted. But I wasn't happy. I was just tired. So tired I could barely stand. The sentencing hearing was the next day, and the judge gave her 8 years with possibility of parole and 5 less mandatory psychiatric treatment and full restitution. The judge said family theft was particularly heinous because it violated sacred trust and destroyed families from within. Uncle Robert sat in the back row crying quietly, while Tara just stared straight ahead with empty eyes like she wasn't even there anymore. Linda never showed up at all. The day after sentencing, 15 family members met at Michael's house for the first time since everything started. No Tara, no Linda, just the ones who'd survived this war. Michael raised his beer and said Grandma would hate what happened, but she'd want us to heal. We tried talking about normal things, but the empty chairs were too obvious, and some relationships were clearly never going to recover. Monica sent me her final invoice the next morning with a note saying I did the right thing, even though it didn't feel like winning because it wasn't. It was surviving injustice. The legal fees totaled $47,000, which wiped out most of my savings, and even with insurance covering some, I'd be paying it off for years, while the jewelry in the safety deposit box was worth maybe $15,000 total. Rachel and I went back to Grandma's favorite coffee shop, and the owner, Mrs. Brown, hugged us both saying, your grandmother would be proud you stood up for what's right. We sat in Grandma's regular booth wearing pieces of her jewelry for the first time since this all started, and the pearl necklace felt so heavy around my neck, but I wasn't taking it off because this is what she wanted, for us to wear them and remember her and stay connected. A letter from Tara arrived at my apartment and I almost threw it away, but curiosity won, and it was short, just saying, I still think you're wrong, but I'm getting help, and maybe one day I'll understand why you did this to me, and maybe one day you'll understand why I did what I did. I burned it in the sink because some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. That Sunday, my parents had Rachel and me over for dinner, and nobody mentioned Tara or Linda or the trial. Mom made Grandma's pot roast recipe, and Dad told his same old jokes, and then Rachel stood up and announced she was pregnant, which was the first good news in months. As we raised our glasses to toast new beginnings, I touched Grandma's bracelet on my wrist, thinking about how the family was smaller now, fractured but not broken, learning to be whole again with the pieces we had left. The jewelry stayed in the family, worn and cherished exactly as Grandma intended, but it would always carry the weight of what it cost us to keep it. Man, time really does fly when we're tossing around clever observations. Thanks for letting me throw in my 2 cents. Catch you on the flip side, and like the video, it helps more than you think.